Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Okay, everyone, I'm forced by YouTube to make some changes to the video which you're going to see. It has to do with copyrighting the music which we put in it, even though there's no copyright on that music whatsoever, because it's too old. That's from a legal viewpoint, but you know what? That's the way it is. The songs in question is a very popular World War II song called Hitler Had Only One Ball. Which is quite funny. And then there was, of course, the Colonel Bogey March, or call it the theme song of Bridge on the River Kwai. Exactly the same song. The composer actually stole. Yes, I accuse him of that. He actually stole the melody of Hitler Had One Ball, and he put a little bit of orchestral music into it, and then, of course, it became a very famous hit outside. The soldiers were actually saying Hitler had only one ball. Because of him, the video would be restricted in certain countries where it cannot be showed. And so I had to remove all of the music. Right at the end where we had a cemetery at Kanchanaburi, where about 6,000 Allied soldiers are lying, I was playing the last taps, the last post, as well as a reveal. Which was actually recorded by the Australian Air Force, and it was given full accreditation, of course, all of them. And there's something called fair use in law, but YouTube don't care about that either. It's no, you know what, no, it's a fascist organization. So to make a long story short, I had to remove that too because copyright claims were made. You wouldn't believe, actually, by somebody with a South African connection, something about the cop line. Never listened to it, couldn't care less. I have no right to claim copyright on that. It's only been around since 1783. Yeah, but anyway. So I had to change it. Otherwise, you people who refuse to go to Rumble and who refuse to go to Odyssey, you will not be able to watch this video at all, because it was either taking it out or dropping it. So if you want to see the video with the music, which is really touching and it's really good and it's at the right places, and it does create a bit of atmosphere, of ambience, which is really good, and please go to Rumble or go to Odyssey. I will leave the links for you in the video itself. So that's the story for this. Let's look at the video. If you're on YouTube, I'm sorry, you're not going to hear the music. Hello everyone, welcome here to Legacy Conversations. We have a special episode, Bridge on the River Kwai, sometimes called Bridge over the River Kwai. Depends on whether you talk about the movie or you talk about the book upon which the movie is based. Strange that they use different names. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You all know what I'm talking about in the Railway of Death. Let me say to you, since I live in Thailand, it's always been in the back of my mind to go to the River Kwai and to see what the bridge actually looks like, and then from there on to Hellfire Pass. And I also visited the cemetery, which is basically what this video is about. I did not take the train ride simply because I didn't have time to do that, but there's a lot of videos out on the internet where you can see these things. But if any of you ever read my books, either under my own name or the GMJ books, the George M. James series, the links are in the description where I speak about these books. Then you will know that I do tend to put in an author's note in the beginning. So I will explain to you exactly what this book is about and what's the intention of it and why it came to being. And some other things too, which you normally won't find in books, but you know what, everybody's got its own style. And that's my way of doing things. So as an intro here, I just want to say that not everything which you read, of course, or hear online he's the truth and the honest truth, so help me God. I mean, I've watched many dozens of videos on the River Kwai, and it's mostly crap. Somebody would just walk in and say, "Oh, I've been here." Okay, well, we tend to go a bit deeper into things here, do you see? And with my books, same with my books, I do tend to uncover historical facts which people are not always aware of. And sometimes it's quite shocking which comes out. I mean, in the first place, everybody will know that, thousands of men died building the bridge on the River Kwai. Nine men died. Yeah, 9 men. Not thousands. No. 9 out of 3,500. That was the first shocking thing which I discovered from various sources. And if you want to know what happened further, then of course, yeah, a lot of people died, and we will discuss that. And every death is a tragedy. I'm not making light of it, but they just got the stories away from truth. And we will also discuss why so few men died building this bridge. There's a lot of reasons for that, which will come out in the video, because the real deaths actually started later on. It started when they're building the railway line further north, and I suppose you can say south from Burma or Myanmar towards, because the two railway lines were supposed to meet with each other. That is where the real deaths really started taking its toll. So that was the first shocking thing. The other thing which I found out, which is interesting to me anyway, is the River Kwai, when the bridge was built there, 1942, 1943, that's how it only took to build the Railway of Death. About 14 months, some people say a bit more. Actually, interesting, it was not called the River Kwai at that stage. It was called something else. It was called the Mai Klong. Then after the movie came out in 1957-58 and became a smashing hit, and we'll talk about it because it's utter crap and bullshit like all Hollywood productions. I mean, you can't really, Hollywood is Hollywood, man, and it is, of course, Jesuit theatre as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read my book, Oath of Evil, The War on Protestantism, 651 pages of fact, and you will find out what I mean when I say Jesuit Society of Jesus theatre. It's very interesting. Everybody thinks that the Jews are actually controlling Hollywood. Yeah, well, read that book, you will quickly find out it's actually not the Jews controlling Hollywood at all. And by the way, Hollywood, you know what it means? The word Holly is the wood which they use when they do magic spells. And that's where the name comes from, Hollywood. All about magic spells. And I don't have to tell you about Hollywood anyway. And if you see my eyes flickering around a bit, man, don't worry about that. There's a couple of mosquitoes trying to murder me here in my studio on the 3rd floor in Patong, in Phuket. It's just, it's natural for your eyes to pick that up. Anyway, they changed the river. The river name was not the River Kwai from the beginning. It changed afterwards, which is fascinating to me. We will also look at it briefly that it wasn't only the white prisoners of war as well as the Indians who were working on the railway. Not at all. There were also about 250,000, let's call them locals type people, Burmese people, Koreans, other nations as well, even from Timor and other places around here. They were all sort of drafted into working there. I mean, it's a bit difficult to explain because they were offered contracts which were not honored. So the guys would be said, okay guys, we're going to pay you $1 a day, food, medical, all those things, will take care of you, come and help us build this railway. And when they arrived, of course it was a totally different story. They got no leave, I don't think they even got paid. And really a lot of them died, more than the prisoners of war, a lot more of them were killed. And there's no real records of that either because, they were not as organized as the prisoner of war camps. Because the Japanese simply cut off all medical supplies, they ran out. But the soldiers were still better off because they were organized and they had some medical attention from the doctors. There were about 400 and I think 44 doctors were captured with the men across the various theatres, and they were also there and with the medical orderlies. They were trying their very best. The locals had no such thing, so they died in wards, even more. One thing I also want to mention is the brutality of the Japanese. We do speak about it. I'm standing there next to the railway line, and it was extemporary. You know, I was just speaking out of my head while I was recording there. I just felt like the right thing to do, so I might have left out a few things. It wasn't the original plan, but that's how we did it. The Japanese brutality was something beyond belief. I mean, most of us would think of the Second World War starting in about 1939 with the invasion of Poland. Then for the Americans here, of course, it would have started in 1941, 42 for you after the Pearl Harbor attack, and Hitler declared war on the US before the US actually could declare war on Germany. It was one of those strange things in life. Fascinating what would have happened if Hitler did not declare war on the US, because then the US had to find a way to declare war on Germany. But they did declare war on Imperial Japan for the attack on Pearl Harbor. What's also interesting, which comes out of the video, is that the UK, the British Empire, in the form of Winston Churchill, and we have a video on that shyster. Go and have a look at it. I'll leave a link for you. He's really no hero. There's nothing great about Winston Churchill. If you disagree with me, go and read my books and go also and listen to what I have to say. It's about an hour and a half long, where we find all the evidence, you know. Shyster, just another politician. Just another guy who's talking shite, just another guy who got bribed, just another guy who got bailed out by the Jewish lobby. Yes, South African Jewish millionaire, mining magnate, actually bailed him out in 1938. And in 1940, when he became Prime Minister, they gave him a huge donation too. Yeah, they bailed him out in the 1920s. What do you know? He suddenly became a Zionist. Just like that, change of mind, you know. But anyway, go and look at the video if you disagree, I don't care. But Churchill gave a very interesting order. The only time in the war when Singapore was besieged by the Japanese, he gave a death order. In other words, he ordered them not to surrender but to fight to the death. Which in great military tradition of the British Army, they showed him a middle finger and told him to, well, they're not going to do that, and so they surrendered in Moscow. It was one of the greatest defeats for the Allies. It was one of the greatest victories for Japan. And as you will find out in this video series, Japan at that stage was not known to treat prisoners badly. By that I mean white people. I don't mean Chinese or people which they would consider not white. We saw that in 1905 with the Russia-Japanese war, which most people forgot about now. But that will also be coming out in the video. But of course, they committed huge crimes against China, who was involved in the Second World War, by the way. Many people don't even know that. You know, it's annoying to me when I speak history to people and they've done a quick Google search and they think they know now everything. Or they've seen one silly 10-minute, viral video on YouTube and now they're experts on it. We have to guard against that thing. You need to get your facts straight. So anyway, they surrendered, and because of that, the Japanese had a lot of men available, cheap labor. We speak about the Geneva Convention here as well. And because of that, they worked them to death. No one expected that. It was not what was expected from Imperial Japan at that stage. Now, it's very interesting to me that there were 600 bridges built on this railway, and only one is famous. And that's the one on the River Kwai, which actually consisted of two of them. There was a wooden one as well, and then there was the iron one, which is still standing sort of, because it's not entirely the one which they built in those days. But anyway, that's the intro. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for being here. Please like, subscribe, the usual things. And let's see what we can learn from the hardship and sacrifices of these brave men. Okay, let us go to the movie. I mean, most of you would have at least heard about the movie. Many of you would have seen it. I saw it as a child, of course, long after it came out. I'm not that old. And it left a big impression upon me because I felt there was something wrong with the movie, even though I was 6 or 7 years old when I saw it. In fact, if you talk to the prisoners of war who were there at the bridge and working on the railway line, they will tell you it's just a pot snot, as we say in Afrikaans. It's utter bullshit, typical Hollywood crap. In the first place, the bridge was one was built out of steel, and the other one was built out of wood. I think in the movie it's only wood, and that bridge don't exist anymore. The one which the original wooden one that doesn't exist anymore. You will not find it anywhere. But that was actually built first. We were building them simultaneously at the same time, yes. But because it was wood, it was easier and quicker to build the wooden one, and then the railway could continue from there while they were still struggling with the iron one or the steel one. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that in the movie it comes out, it's very jingoism. You know it, Puka, British officer style, you roll my eyes. Yeah, British Army. Those days, under Montgomery, not talking about here in the Far East now, the Forgotten Army, was very, very different from the one which we find today. In fact, as we sit here today, you can fit the entire British Army in a Think Wembley football stadium, and half of it will still be empty. It's an army with more horses than tanks. Royal Navy, once so mighty, got more admirals than fighting ships. You know that. What about the Royal Air Force, once so mighty? Well, apparently they started to do a affirmative action thing, and now they ran out of pilots. So it's a very different world today than what it used to be. I'm not a great admirer of the British Army. I will tell you straight in your face. Let's talk about the 53% deaths in the concentration camps during the South African War, also known as the Second Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902, but you probably don't know about that either. We're still waiting for your apology, by the way, which will never come. Fascinating the things you did. You even caused apartheid, do you know that? British Army, do you know that? Probably not. Should read my books. But anyway, the movie itself is nonsense. I will show you some clips where they come marching in and they're whistling the song. I think it's called the Colonel Boogie March, or the song of the River Kwai. And it looks so manly, and he looks so fantastic. And the prisoner of war says, "It's just crap." No, never happened like that. No, not it. And then it's fascinating too, the song, the Boogie March, or whatever I call it. This was actually a copy of a very famous World War II song called Hitler Had Only One Ball. You have to give the Brits credit here. I mean, they do have a sense of humor. And I'll play that song for you too. It might be so that YouTube will, of course, come up with normal nonsense of claiming copyright somewhere. It's one of the scams which YouTube are actually very famous for. They've got people, not them themselves, but they got other people who actually make a living out of this. What they do is they would scan every video with some crawler software. Then they pick up something, even the last post. They would pick up that and then they claim immediately they have copyright on it. And you as the creator has really no say in it. I mean, you can deny it and dispute it and do whatever you want. It'll take more than a month for them to actually agree or not to agree. And if they say, no, you are lying, a creator, that is their copyright, and YouTube will just honor that. But then if you make any money out of a video and we don't, that's another scam artist from YouTube. Then they will take this money and they will put also the ads on your video, which I say to you always in all videos, I don't support any ads on this video. And if you find anything, somebody advertising it, please ignore it. Or go to the alternative channels at Odyssey as well as at Rumble, and probably you'll find less ads there, or you might even find a video definitely at Odyssey. I'll leave the links. You will find it without any ads and without any interruptions from YouTube. Because really this is just a scam. It's annoying. It's what they do. And I speak to you as a very experienced attorney. It seems to me that these people make a living out of false claims. And they're being honoured. Of course they are. It's fascism. But anyway, also in the movie you have this Colonel Nicholson or something who's now the commander. He's got nothing to do with the real commander there, which was Lieutenant Colonel Tusi, Philip Tusi, wonderful man, highly respected, highly admired by his men, and totally not what the movie betrays. And if you followed Legacy, you would see I made a series on how to survive as a hostage in Sub-Saharan Africa. And there's a very real reason why I actually made it in Sub-Saharan Africa, not the rest of the world, because I know the theatre and I know how they operate. It's very fascinating to go through the phases and to see how you can survive and not survive, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Also, a lot of that comes out in my books. But one of the things I actually use in this lecture, which I gave and still give sometimes when I'm asked to do so, is we look at the Stockholm Syndrome. We use the example of this Colonel Nicholson in the movie, Bridge on the River Kwai, where he actually starts helping the Japanese because he wants to prove that the British soldiers can build the best bridge the Japs has ever seen, because the Japs are so backward they can't build their own bridges. Well, that's bullshit too, but the Japanese, whatever other faults in life they have, is we're not incapable of building bridges. They really knew how to build bridges as well as, railway lines and things like that. Yeah, they could do that. So that's other nonsense which comes out in the movie. It is just that to be, a failing empire trying to get a little bit back to the natives, or maybe put it blunt like that. And the way that he goes on, and at the end of the movie, I'm not even going to show the clip here. Those of you who want to see the movie, it's available online, I'm sure. You will see that British commandos actually attack this bridge, and he finds the cortex where they link the explosives with, and he doesn't want the bridge to be blown up, simply because he built it. He's totally into this now. So that is a Stockholm Syndrome. That is a classic example of a Stockholm Syndrome. Whether the guys actually wrote the book, the Frenchmen who wrote it, by the way, can't speak a word of English, so it was translated. That's the other fascinating thing about this movie. The two guys who wrote the script actually had to flee, I tell you, the US because of McCarthy trials, because they were seen as communists or something, so they were not credited. The author were credited, but he couldn't speak a word English, so it came out later, and they had to credit these two who were by that time already deceased. By the way, once again, if you read my books, you will find out that list of McCarthy were the communists. After the war, the Cold War, that is, after that ended, and the Russian and Soviet archives were opened, and they could break the Venona Code, It turns out that every single name he mentioned there was true. True. Yeah, they were communists, all of them. One of them you can still argue about, but mostly all of them. Fascinating from this is why did China become communist again? You know, Chiang Kai-shek on the one side was pro, capitalist, against communism. Then you had Mao, Chairman Mao, communism. What happened? Yeah, I tell you what happened. The communists in the White House, they actually they forced the issue. They were called the old China hands. And that's why China became communist, and China is your biggest threat, according to yourselves anyway, these days. And quite honestly true. I wrote a book called American Military Might Debunked. Perhaps you should go and read it, because you ain't as good as you think you are. Really not. You're heading for defeat. You're heading for defeat. Don't fall for the bluster of Donald Trump and mates. Bullshit. Bullshit. And there are many American officers who are speaking out, and of course they are suppressed. But anyway, that is with Colonel Nicholson. He was trying to prevent the bridge from being blown. That's a Stockholm Syndrome thing as well. So there are a lot of inconsistencies here. It's just bloody nonsense. I mean, but it's a good story. And it's still worth your while to go and look at the movie. Very good actors, of course. And it's not the actors' fault. I mean, they just parrots, they just follow the script. But that's about the movie. It is just nonsense. Hello everyone. We're standing here at the famous bridge over the River Kwai. And may I say to you that this episode was made possible by Rebecca as well as by the Patreon. So if you want to see more videos like this, kindly think about supporting us through the Patreons. And to get to this place was quite a story. It's almost 1,000 kilometers away from our place in Phuket. And we're going to do this very differently than the normal. In the first place, I've done quite a bit of research on it, and I can tell you that most of what you've heard about the bridge over the River Kwai, especially the movie, is nonsense. It's totally not true. Now, legacy conversations is nothing but history. That's all it is. When you people come and tell us your history or your story, that is living history. That is oral history. That is how we used to do it in Africa. You'll remember the old Indunas would sit under a tree and they would tell stories. And then later, of course, came the books. And the problem is, for the books, is it's not always true, especially not in our case. So I thought, let us come here, let us look at this place, let us see what's the truth behind the fiction. It is beautiful here. I have to say to you, I don't know if it looked like this during those times. But standing here is really a magnificent place, and there was so much terror and horror going on here as well. So why was this railway even needed? I mean, what made the Japanese decide they want to build a railway through Thailand to Burma? Now, Thailand's history in the Second World War is a bit murky. And I have to be very careful how I say it because I am living in Thailand and I really love the country. And we also made another video which is about the birth of a Royal Thai Navy. And we even have like a torpedo boat, which is a museum ship. We made a video of that, I think in Champan. Great place to visit if you're ever around here. Very much worth your while to go and find out how the Royal Thai Navy got to be. And they got, of course, quite a good military. I mean, they really have a good military. They proved themselves in many wars, as well as in Vietnam. Yeah, they were involved there. But fascinating is that Thailand sort of was on the side of Imperial Japan in the beginning, and then they switched. They even attacked France in the sense of Indochina, which that case was, I think, one big country, Vietnam, as well as Laos. I think all of them were together, not independent countries. This is before the Vietnam War. So they attacked each other because Thailand felt done in by territorial claims. And what makes Thailand very unique is I think it's one of two countries in the world that was never conquered by white people. They were never colonized. Never, ever. And they're very proud of that, and they should be. But anyway, so they first fought with the Imperial Japanese and later they fought against the Imperial Japanese. But what happened was is in the meantime, the Japanese army and air force and navy and everything went on an attacking spree and they invaded Burma, which is today Myanmar. Big country, great place. And they went there and they started attacking because they wanted to get to India. They also wanted to move the Western powers as far away from them as possible. Very much the same which China is doing these days with their missile screens. You won't get close to China with your aircraft carriers or bases or whatever. They will destroy you. Read my book, American Military Might Debunk. It comes out there. But anyway, it's besides the point. But it was the strategy. We wanted to move out. Also fascinating is about 74% of the Japanese army was fighting in China, in Manchuria. They were not, repeat, not fighting against the Americans or Brits or whoever from our viewpoint where the war was taking place. It's the same as in Europe. Most of the German army, the Nazi army, was fighting against Soviet Union. Yes. It's only the dregs which were left over for us to fight. The West don't know this, so that's why I mention it. But the reason why we needed to build this railway line between Thailand and linking up with Burma, and it was not a new idea. The Brits were thinking about doing that here in about 1904 already, but they decided not to do it because it would cost too much in money and too much in manpower. And of course, they knew there would be deaths on that railway, even they tried in a civilized way. But the Japanese couldn't give us, you know what? And so they had these men available, young men, fit men, and they could make them work according to the Geneva Convention, but not the way they treated them. There's a huge difference, and I do explain it in the video from a legal viewpoint. But the US Navy then got involved. They started sinking every single Japanese ship they could get hold of. In fact, they ran out of ships to sink. They sank the entire Japanese fleet of merchant ships and a lot of the Japanese warships as well. They were just cleaning up. I mean, it was just amazing how well the US Navy was operating in those days, even though they committed war crimes. I do speak about that as well. It comes out in my books. It's fair. You can't point fingers at people and they not expect that they're going to look at you as well. What do they say? You point a finger at you and there's 4 fingers pointing back. There is such a saying. Well, anyway, because of the losses, they couldn't do the logistics in Burma, so they needed a railway line which could carry the logistics, the troops, the ammo, the whatever. As you should know, most of you will be military people. You know that logistics is absolutely everything. Everything in war. Logistics is where it starts and ends. And I myself have a great fascination in logistics. I have a theory that it's quite easy to kill, and I have experience in that, and I have experience in logistics as well. And I can tell you that working out the staff courses and those things are much more worth than an MBA degree. If you have passed the staff course in any army, reputable army, takes a year. I rate you higher than a guy coming out of an Ivy League university with an MBA. Yeah, just as one of those things. But anyway, so that's why they needed to do it. They needed this railway line to reinforce and to do the logistics. And so they started it, and they had quotas. They had to move it every day, I think 30 feet or something. They worked it out. There were also tremendous pressure on the people to get the job done. And then there was national honor. You know, every engineer of a railway regiment or battalions from the Japanese army wanted to, you know, get a medal and get some shine from the generals or from the emperor or whoever. And so they didn't care. They would drive these men to death just to get, you know, to finish in time. They also say in the history books, it's a pity that the guy who originally designed this railway line, a chief engineer or something in Japan, he died. He died while he was flying with an aircraft to see where the route would be. And he died. Because of that, they didn't even follow the best route. They followed the route which they sort of made up, fairly ignorant if you ask me. And once again, they didn't care. They couldn't care about cost. They couldn't care about the loss of life. They just went out and they did it. But that is the reason why this railway line came into being.
Well, we're standing here at, I believe, at least the railway station. Right on that side would be it looked like a locomotive type of thing standing there, an old Japanese truck, things like that. We'll go and take pictures just now. Lots of tourists around, even if it's early in the morning. Now, what's fascinating to me is if you look at the railway line, you will see the sleepers which they put in here is made of concrete. So this is obviously not original. But if you go to the bridge which starts that side, you will find the old wooden sleepers and everything is still there. Now, fascinating, this bridge was not constructed here in the sense that it wasn't forged here in a factory. They actually stole it. They invaded Malaysia first. And once they invaded Malaysia, which, by the way, was an hour before the Pearl Harbor attack, Americans wake up. They were not the first to be attacked. Malaysia was. And Britain, of course, declared war actually before the US Congress did so. And what was funny about that too is Winston Churchill wrote a very polite letter where he said something like, okay, we know at war and sincerely yours, your servant or whatever. And people were very angry with him, with the parliament. Why would you be so polite? And he said something like, you know, if you're going to kill somebody, you can just as well be polite. So anyway, what I meant when I said it wasn't built here is the fact that they stole the bridge and they transported it here by the railway. And then, of course, it was just assembled here, which doesn't take away anything of the hard work because, as you would know, normally when you do these things, you do it by way of machinery. There's heavy-duty machinery involved. In this instance, there were two hands. That's all they were using. And this makes it so remarkable. It really was something else. It's something to look at. It's really something different. And today it's a tourist attraction, and I must tell you, I'm not impressed with what I see here. I think most people don't have a damn clue what they are about. I don't see any respect, to be honest. I don't see anything here. So, and yeah, so I would love to see people show more respect. You know, it's like they come here because it's a bridge and they've heard about it in the movie. But I don't see any of them actually doing something with it. And if you want to know why I'm stretching here, some old guy walked past and gave me a salute. And so it's just military courtesy to stretch back and to answer the salute. The way we do it, that's the SAT way, SADF as well. I'm touched. I must tell you, I'm deeply touched standing here. Yes, of course, a lot of you would have heard that thousands of people died here. It's not true. Only 9 men out of the 3,500 who were working here actually died on this building of this very bridge. Now, the reason for that is at this stage, this was one of the first bridges they actually built. So as they were moving inland towards the north, they were becoming gradually weaker and they were abused, of course, a lot more. and malaria and all sorts of illnesses started getting them, and that's why they died in such strokes. But here at this bridge, they were still quite close to the supply lines, and therefore they were also recently captured, and were fit young men, soldiers, and so they could survive the brutality. The real brutality started up north after this bridge was built. And that's where the story comes from. But every sleeper you see here is a dead person. It's a dead soldier. It is somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's loved one, perhaps a husband, all of them here. Now, most of you would have been trained in the Geneva Conventions. It's part of your training when you go to the army. So you know how to treat prisoners of war. Now, there's something odd here. In 1905, there was the war between Russia, Imperial Russia, that is, and Japan. And it took place at Port Arthur, and also there was a huge naval battle which the Japanese actually won. And the vodka navy, as they called the Russian squadron, which came all the way from Europe, sailing right down, they say there was a stream of vodka bottles lying up behind it for about 6,000 miles. They actually sailed into a trap, and they got seriously sunk. I mean, they were basically wiped out. But fascinating, the Japanese treated the Russian prisoners of war very, very well. In fact, they were treating them so well that they got awards for it. They were praised internationally that they treated these people according to the Geneva Convention and more. Now, of course, it's idiotic to treat somebody badly, because if you do that, the chances are that he will not surrender. And if he will not surrender, at some stage he's going to shoot you. So it's better to treat the captured people with respect, because the enemy has your people as well. So what do? It's not really known in history that in 1945, General Eisenhower actually wrote a formal letter of apology to the German High Command in Europe. And the reason he did that is because some junior officers loaded a whole bunch of German army, you can call them Nazis if you want to, but not all of them were, into a train, and they died because of a lack of air, a couple of hundred of them. In fact, it was a war crime which he apologized for, and since he apologized, what's Rebecca's pointing at something, I'm not sure what. Oh, there's a squirrel there on the... Yeah, you see, that's also which is fascinating. Why I like standing here and a bit away from the bridge is, there's another, there's two of them, three.
I see them on here.
Really cute.
There's 3 squirrels.
3 of them.
Okay. Sorry, hun.
Yeah, and so anyway, it is a place of great natural beauty. But anyway, to get back to the war crimes, it's not against the Geneva Convention to make enlisted men work, labor work. You've done it yourself. There's a lot of Germans captured. There were Italians in South Africa. They did a lot of good work. One of the court cases we studied at law school is how far would the officer's command still go as a prisoner of war? And there goes the local, I don't know what to call the hooligans on their bikes. Anyway, as I said, in South Africa, we tested that. There was one who they thought was an impimpi or a traitor. And the officer had its own court-martial, I suppose, in a prisoner of war camp. And they executed this guy. And then, of course, they got arrested, and they said, but look, we were following orders. He was a traitor, and therefore we could execute him legally under war circumstances. A very, very fascinating legal case. But lawyers are boring, so I will not go further with that. Truth to be told, I can't remember what happened. I think we were found guilty. Yes, we were found guilty, sentenced, and then after the war, we were actually released. So it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon if you capture somebody to take them and then to make them work physically in the field. I know there's a lot of actually, how shall we put it, the OMO principle, old man out in the British Army. If a guy is deployed somewhere, the wife would put the OMO box of washing powder on the balcony, and everybody see the old man is out, and then the postman comes in, if you understand what I mean. Now, a lot of the people, of course, were recruited. All the young men were not actually at home. So there were a lot of, let's call it romantic affairs going on between the prisoners of war on both sides. The Brits and the Americans in Germany captured there wherever held All of them had some relationship. Now, you still have to treat these people fairly. You cannot treat them the way they were treated here, and that is what makes it so strange, because as I said, in 1905, Japan treated them very well. Suddenly, Japan had a new generation there, and they totally changed, and they started treating these people really atrociously, very, very badly. Even if I say only 9 of them died, that doesn't matter. The fact is, they were setting them up to die. They were taking away their food. They were working them brutally until death. They would, of course, beat them up all the time. The prisoners of war themselves talk about the Korean guards, which were by that time occupied by Japan, Imperial Japan. They were just as brutal, but they were brutally treated themselves. Now, 2 wrongs doesn't make a right now, does it? It's a piece of example. Then there's also in the Geneva Convention that an officer, a commissioned officer, cannot be made to do forced manual labor. That caused a lot of problems here because they were forced to do manual labor. They also ran out of clothes quite quickly. If you know the climate here, you would understand that no clothes will last forever here, especially not those made for European conditions, because there were no real jungle type of clothing at that stage. They said they had, but if you look at them closely, they're really not. And at some stage, the men became naked, and they had like loincloths, and they were just skin and bones because they were living on rice. Basically, they only had rice to eat, and whatever else they could make a stew from snakes to, whatever, I would say monkeys, whatever, they were desperate. Now it's a funny thing, once again, if I can go back to the way that the prisoners of war were kept in Europe, on both sides, many of the men, and there's a South African connection with The Great Escape, which is another movie where South Africans were involved, pilots. They all said they escaped to have sex. Yes, they were young men, vital men, and they had no such thing there in the camps, with being not gay, even though that happened quite a lot as well. Especially in the US prisoners, they were fairly well known for that, doing each other. Then they tried to escape to get back to Europe or their country so that they can form relations. They don't want to die a virgin. I fully understand that concept. But in this theatre, it was different. The survivors said they had no interest in that. They were just worried about food. So they would dream about food. If they had any dreams or anything talking about life outside the camps, it would only be about food. Any food. They couldn't care what food, as long as it's food. And that is what starvation do to you. It will always be a black cloud hanging over Japan because of this. And if you look at again, they've never apologized. They never cared about it. There were 152 of them were trialed, were put on trial after the war for war crimes. 32 of them were hanged. But in fact, every single one of them should have been hanged.
One of the questions I've been asked here is why didn't these prisoners of war try to escape? After all, there were not enough Japanese to really, look after them in that sense, and they were in camps in the jungle. I don't think they were really barbed wire or anything around it. So they were kept there, and they couldn't escape. And very few of them did, as far as I know. Well, it's a fascinating thing because there is a duty upon you under the Geneva Conventions as well in most armies that if you are captured during wartime and you're in uniform, you are supposed to make an attempt at least to escape. It's not the same in the civilian world. It's once again, if you look at my lectures on surviving as a hostage, I do talk about that because from a legal viewpoint, it's a very, very different scenario than in wartime. If you try to escape in wartime and you kick some sentry to death, it's really not a big problem from a legal viewpoint. It will be a serious damn problem if they catch you. But you are allowed to kill to escape, basically. As a civilian, you're not. You're not allowed to kill to escape. There's a huge difference, and there's also no order upon you to do that. You don't have to escape if you're a civilian. Be good if you do, but if you don't, it can't really be held against you by your company. So it's really fascinating the different scenarios which we talk about in that series. But the reason why they didn't escape is in the first place, they look different. In other words, a white man will always stand out in a place like Thailand, but in Burma, you can't really hide with the locals. It's not Europe, you know what I mean? It's not Canada, it's not South Africa up to a point. So that was one of the major reasons. The other reason was the local tribes were bribed by the Japanese to actually track and capture these people. And when they do, and they did, and they handed these men back, they were most brutally treated. I mean, I know about one who was actually bayoneted to death. Yes, after the war. Because I believe on 15 August 1945, the war came to an end here in the Far East, and he escaped. And they didn't know about it. They didn't know that the war has come to an end. He escaped. He was captured by the tribes. So he was brought back, and he was bayoneted to death the day after the war ended. So Australian soldier. So the other reason also is they were simply not physically in a good condition to do it. Because they were starved, and we will talk about that, or perhaps we've already done it, with the 7 Medical Battalion specialists, and they will tell you what happens to you when you have a starvation diet in a climate like Thailand and Burma, which is warm, flippant warm, and very humid, with a monsoon. Oh, it's something else. And then you don't get vegetables. That's your biggest problem. You don't get any vegetables in. And they were supposed to get vegetables. On paper, you would see that the Allies of the Japanese Imperial Army were fully aware of this, and they would allocate vegetables to these people, to the prisoners of war, but they never received it. Or they received a tiny amount. They would allocate it about 18,000 kilograms a month, and they would receive, say, 4,500. And because of a very much weakened condition, they also couldn't escape. And that's the major reasons. That's why it happened. Interesting, it happened in Korea as well. Not a single Allied, when I mean white people now, not a single Allied prisoner of war escaped from North Korea, ever. Same reasons. Same reasons, except of course they were kept in cages. But your problem was still is how the hell, when even if you get out of a camp, you can't hide yourself, man. You don't look like the locals. It's very hard. But that's the reason. That's as far as we could uncover why they didn't escape in Massa, why they didn't attack the Japanese, why they didn't just take over. It's easy for us from a distance of about 80 years now to point fingers. I'm not pointing fingers. I have just great respect and sympathy to these people. Okay, we're going to Hellfire Pass now. It's a really nice scenic drive. Once you are finished at the River Kwai, at Kanchanaburi, which is 1,000 kilometers away from Phuket where we live, took us 2 days to drive there. Fantastic road. Wonderful thing about Thailand roads is we're in good condition. And the top speed on the highways where we drove anyway was 90 kilometers an hour. And it's mostly a double highway all the way. It's fantastic, and then people don't speed. They keep to that speed limit. It's amazing. It's not South Africa at all. When you get close to Bangkok, the drivers become a bit more, say city-like. They would come right at your tailgate you until you give way to them, things like that. But normally, it's a really nice drive. And so when we were finished at the railway station there at River Kwai and the bridge, we took the hour and a half drive. It's about 74 kilometers. We took it to Hellfire Pass. Wonderful drive, really scenic, nice to see. In the old days, there was a train which actually ran from River Kwai Bridge all the way to Hellfire Pass and back. That train, as we speak here today, don't run anymore. So we had to drive. And we arrived there, I must tell you, Australia, man, they did a good job. It is fantastic to go there. It's Australians who built this museum there with Hellfire Pass and everything, and I cannot tell you how impressive it is. You have to experience this. Man, it's fantastic. It's people speak good English. They are very approachable. They are there to help. They're there to assist. It is spotlessly clean. They are just, man, they got videos going there. You can walk this path. It's amazing. It is just amazing to go there. So if you can ever get the chance to get there, please get there. It's very important. What's interesting to me is that Hellfire Pass is not actually known as Hellfire Pass only. It's got different names. It's also known as Konyu, and it is known as Kenyu, and it's also known as K3. So it's got different names, which people talk about, and they talk about the same place. And there were many of these passes. This is just the most famous. And it was the most horrible one. I was walking the entire pass, taking pictures, videos for you. Might be a bit shaky. I do apologize, but that's how I walk, man. Just most horrible. To imagine that people had to do this by hand without power tools. They had some power tools at substage, and also by this time they were very much weakened. They were in a weakened state. They were not as healthy as they were when they were building the River Kwai. And a lot of them died. A lot of them were brutally beaten to death. Yeah, flogged to death. Can you believe it? It's amazing what the Japanese did. And as I say in the videos, not enough of them were hanged in my eyes. This is where the real killings now started, unlike at River Kwai. But let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at this pass and see what it's about.
That's the path. Yeah, that's the path. Did you see the broken grill trick?
Yes.
You saw it?
Yes.
Stuck in the side of the mountain.
On the way back from Hellfire's Pass, we drove right past Kanchanaburi Cemetery, where I believe almost 7,000 men are lying buried there. Now, after the war in 1945, the War Dead Burial Commission, something like that, visited the railway line. They took a lot of pictures and they started identifying men. Because as the men would die, the dog tags would be taken by the medical officer. Some of these dog tags were buried right next to the railway line and marked, and these people dug it out. And so they could see who died where, and I don't know exactly how they identified the bodies, but the cemetery is there. And let me tell you, when you walk through that cemetery, it's silent. There's no joking around there. There's no effing around. It's man, you walk there and you see all these young men. Now it's fascinating again because in Vietnam, according to a famous song, 19, they were 19 years old. It's not true, by the way. The real average age of American soldier in Vietnam was much older, about 25. In World War II, they were much older than even that because they were recruiting and enlisting every single man they could find. So the average age in World War II was about 34, 35 years old. So these were not children anymore. For our wars, I would say our average age of our national service people were about 19, perhaps even younger. So many of the graves which you see there, the guys are in their late 20s or in their early 30s. It's also interesting to me that you see different units there. You see fighting units, they are there. You also see guys from the non-fighting units, the clerks and the store people and things like that. They were all, the Japanese didn't make any difference, they just grabbed everybody they could as far as they were concerned. So anyway, we walked there and we saw this cross. There's a cross standing there. And the sun was setting behind the cross. And I stood there for a few minutes and I was very, very deeply touched. Also, interesting thing which happened there at that cemetery is I got a book. As Rebecca and myself, we walked into the cemetery. There's an old Thai guy standing there, and he's selling this for 250 baht, which is nothing. It's a few dollars. I've never seen this book before, and I doubt if you've seen it before. There's no way in the world you're going to find this book anywhere else except there. It is a weird book, and I'm telling you as an author who wrote many dozens of books, in the sense that in the first place, you don't know who wrote it. There's no name on it. You don't know who published it because that's not mentioned either. There's no legal stuff in the book whatsoever, there's no disclaimers, there's nothing, it's just there. But then if you actually read the book, and it's really good, it's got lots of pictures, a lot of information which I'm telling you come out of this book. It's a strange book besides these things which I mentioned to you because there's really a lot of spelling mistakes in it. So it's obviously translated from probably Thai or somewhere else, some other language, because this is not written by a native English-speaking person. You can see the way. I mean, every second paragraph has a spelling mistake, but you can still deduct, of course, what they want to say. And there's really a lot of interesting pictures. There's a lot of interesting things here. I mean, they speak here, for instance, about elephants. They brought in elephants from Burma. Within a month or two, the drivers of the elephants were dead because of cholera. And then, then the elephants, of course, would refuse to work, so they let the elephants go. So if you can get hold of this book, if you're there at the cemetery and they want to sell this book to you, please buy with me. It's worth your while to read this book. It is fantastic. It's a totally different viewpoint from what you would see in the standard Western type of documentaries and books of things which we are so used to. But let's take a look at the cemetery. Walk with me through the cemetery. I'm not going to put the sound on. I want you to think. I will try to put in the last steps here as well. I don't know what YouTube is going to do with it. I told you before about the damn scam by running way out of Berlin in Germany. Fascist Germany, as I call them these days. Probably will have to edit it out, and if so, well, if you go to Odyssey or you go to Rumble, you'll be able to actually get the entire video without YouTube's crap. As we sit here today, 1/4 of this railway is still working. It is still operational. In 1945-46, after the war ended, the Brits, for some reason, I don't know why, it comes out of that book which I found at the cemetery, out of this one. They actually demolished about 3.5 kilometers of each side of the Burma border as well as the Thailand border. They demolished the railway line. Why? I don't know. I've got no idea. But as it is now, about 1/4 of the railway is still operational. Statistics which the best we could get hold of, and I know there will be people who will disagree with me. Feel free to do it. Then 1 in every 4 prisoners of war who worked on it actually died. 1 in 4. That's about 13,000. Some units lost about 45% of the men. Yeah, that is a lot. They moved it at about 30 feet a day. That's how they built this railway line. And they removed 4 million cubic feet of dirt and rocks and stones that they removed by hand. After the railway was finished, the Japanese split them into 3 groups, survivors. Those who were still the strongest and the fittest and who were real survivors, they sent to Japan to work in coal mines. I'm not sure what happened to them further, but I'm sure it's horrible. And of course, to get to the coal mines, they had to take ships, and those ships were being sunk by the US Navy, as well as other navies. We don't blame the US Navy for that, not at all. That is a totally fair game, even though some people say it's not. I mentioned Admiral Dönitz of the German Navy, who did exactly the same thing, unrestricted U-boat warfare. That's what we call it from the Allied side. And he was sent to prison, and of course, Allied leaders, no, of course not, of course not. And then those who were really, really ill and totally useless now to the Japanese war effort, they were sent back to Singapore. They were sent to one of the camps to stay in Singapore, where they were rescued later. And then there was a small group who stayed behind on the railway line to repair the bomb damage, flood damage. Some of these rivers, even the River Kwai, they say can raise about 12 to 18 feet, during monsoon. So it's vicious. So as the Allied bombers were attacking the bridge, and they did attack the bridge at the River Kwai a few times, they did bring down some of the spans, they did destroy the wooden one. They would be repairing it, but according to the survivors, they said life was almost bearable during that time. We should focus on the word almost bearable. And here at the ending, I want to end this. I found a video of some British POWs who went back in 1985. So about, 40 years after the war. They're all dead now, I presume. And they stood at the very cemetery which we showed you. And they had somebody there. I don't know if he's a trained pastor or reverend. I don't know from which church. I have no idea. I don't even know his name. But he stood there and he said a prayer. And I want to end this video now with this prayer. With full credit to them as well. So thank you for listening. God bless you until we meet again.
We have come to this place of peace and quiet beauty to pay our simple but sincere tribute to those of our families and friends who lie buried here. Let us first hear some words from a psalm. I lift up my eyes to the hills, but where shall I find help? My help comes from the Lord, who has made heaven and earth. Let us pray. O God our Father, look graciously upon us as we are gathered here in remembrance. We have come to pay our homage and respects to those who in far-off days were our husbands and fathers, brothers, friends and comrades. In our remembrance, we bring to mind young men in the prime of their lives, who asked nothing more than that they could live life to the full in ways of their own choosing, enjoying the company of family and friends. You know, Lord, that their desires were not to be fulfilled because of the fortunes of war. Their lot was to suffer indignity and deprivation and hardship inflicted by their fellow men, even unto death. Some we remember for their wise counsel which encouraged us. Some made us laugh and kept us cheerful. Some helped us in countless little ways that made life more bearable. Some, too, we recall with particular pride and gratitude, for they risked their lives for the sake of others and gave their all. As your Son said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man give his life for his friends." So we honor all for their uncomplaining patience and fortitude, which have been like a beacon light in the lives of us, their comrades and loved ones, who have been spared for these many years. Your Son Jesus also said that in your house are many resting places prepared for those who will dwell with you in eternity. We dare to believe that these our long-lost friends and loved ones do indeed dwell in your care and keeping, enjoying your presence and blessing. Their memory is safe in our keeping. Keep their souls safe, O God, until the time comes when we shall all meet again in glory. All this we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who taught us when we pray to say, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I think that what we just heard is very, very touching. And I think that we should learn from history. We should learn it from history that it never repeats again. As I said before in this video, that if you're ever in a position where you can prevent this type of thing, then kindly follow the Geneva Conventions and your conscience. It's very, very important. But before we end this video with a few bloopers, just to take a little bit away from the serious side, there is something which I want to go into a bit more detail here. And those of you who are observant will notice that the studio looks different. That's true. Since I made the video first, we changed it, upgraded it a bit, but it's still the same quality and sound and same cameras and things like that we use. I want to briefly speak to you about something which I mentioned in my book, code name Alphabet 32. And now Alphabet 32 is the one in which we first started talking about Allied war crimes. Because if you think that the greatest generation was the Second World War generation and they never did something wrong, well, you know, I knew a fellow who served in the 101 division in Vietnam, South Vietnam, 2 tours of duty, lost an eye there, great guy. And he once said to me that when they arrived at the VA hospitals, they were treated like, almost like skunks, they were treated like totally different from the World War II generation who, after all defeated Hitler. Shame you didn't. The Soviet army did. But anyway, you did contribute and we're very grateful. Thank you for your service. But anyway, so it is totally wrong to think that during war times things don't happen on both sides. It always does. It is just then the victor, of course, will get away with it. They always do. That's a way of life. That's just the way it works. So you have, here and there you will have a historian, or you will have somebody like me who wrote many books and has got an interest in this type of thing, who will actually start talking about it and then, of course, totally disbelieved or suppressed. So I think it's important that we just mention it now. Now, again, codename Alphabet 32 has nothing to do with war crimes as such. It's just mentioned in the passing. Because in my books, wherever you find the characters discussing history, or they have some facts there, weapons, whatever, you can be damn sure that they're actually telling the truth. And it is a message for you to take to heart. The book itself is about the best anti-tank missile in the world. It's a South African-made Mokopa, or Mokopa, which means apparently black mamba, which is a vicious snake in, I think, Lesotho language, but I'm not too sure. Now, even this missile has an interesting background, because South Africa did use missiles during the border war to shoot out tanks. In fact, they stopped the Fopla Brigade of tanks. It was the largest tank battle since World War II in Africa, which most people, of course, don't know about. So they had Lombard River, Keto Carnival, go to Legacy Conversations, search for it, you will find it. You'll even find audio of these missiles being launched and shooting out the Soviet tanks which were advancing on South African armor. And they just shot them out. Fantastic story, really fantastic. As Colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Hannes Nordman, look at his video and you'll find all the footage and things there. Now, after 1990, when South Africa was a bit more welcomed in the world, because Mandela was released, but before the elections and just after the elections, when South Africa handed over its nuclear weapons to the US for disposal, South Africa was looking for a new anti-tank missile, and they approached the US, of course, because South Africa at that stage was very US-orientated, very Western, very NATO-orientated. In fact, we had spies on here who spoke to me, and some of them spoke to me in private, and they said, well, they had excellent repertoire, talks and things going on all the time with NATO, with Brussels headquarters in Belgium. In fact, every day they would report in and report back. So it was very interesting where South Africa was standing in the First Cold War. In the Second Cold War, which is going on now, of course, South Africa is on the other side. It's a BRICS country. If you're interested in that, look at my video where I speak about BRICS. I've been warning about it in my book since 2014. But the analysts only woke up to it very recently, and they still don't get what it's about. But it doesn't matter, you can look at that video. So South Africa approached the White House on a Billy Goat Clinton. Yeah, you know that fellow, the one who ran to Oxford. Yeah, ran away. Didn't want to go to Vietnam. No. No, he ran to Oxford, couldn't complete his degree, but apparently he did smoke a few things there which he never inhaled. And then suddenly, after he was not the president anymore, he said he did inhale. Fascinating how the lies always comes out, isn't it? It's a bit biblical. But anyway, we approached him when he was still in command here at the White House. I don't know if it's before or after he actually lost the nuclear codes. He lost it for something like 6 weeks. Yeah. It's astonishing which comes out in my books. It's astonishing. But anyway, so they told South Africa, no, you can't have a Hellfire. No, go and have yourself. We're not giving it to you guys. Okay, well, South Africa then went out and they designed a missile, Mokopa, which is so much better than a Hellfire and anything else in the world. It is scary. And if you want to know how this missile works and how it can be used, because it's not only for anti-armor, it can also be used with different warheads against bunkers, against houses, against ships. You can do that. It can be launched by the Rooivalk attack helicopters from over the horizon. I describe the sequences in that book as well. There's a lot of things, I noticed things. We made a very good video on the Rooivalk attack helicopter talking to Colonel Trevor Alston, who was a test pilot on that very model. You could go and look at that as well. It's fascinating when I read the comments and how little even South Africans know about the South African weapons, which are still being designed, if not produced, at great quality. The best short-range and medium-range air-to-air missile in the world, also a South African design. Yeah, people don't know that. Should read, if you want to know about the Nels V3 Agile Data, perhaps you should read Codename Blue Tank. You'll also find out that the West never had air supremacy in Western Europe during the First Cold War after about 1983. They never had it. But I explained that in other videos as well, so I'm not going to bother with that. What I want to talk about is something which happened after the war in 1945. Now, it was clear that the Germans were going to surrender. There's no doubt about it. Now the Japanese gained a bit of a reputation that they will never surrender. And so a lot of them didn't surrender according to the history, but we have to wonder if they perhaps wanted to surrender but were not allowed to surrender. I think a lot of that happened as well. The guy raised his arms, come walking to you, shoot him dead. It happens. It happens in war. It happens recently in Gaza, where just after 2 years ago, just after the attack of Hamas, some Israelis actually escaped. They took their shirts off, I suppose, to look less Arab, and they approached Israeli forces. They were waving their shirts and things around to attract attention, and 3 of them were shot dead on the spot. It's the fortunes of war. I suppose we can say a lot about fire discipline, things like that. We can point fingers. Not going to bring those Juboikis back. They're all dead. These things happen. And it definitely happened in the Japanese war as well. There's no doubt about it whatsoever. The statistics are very clear. But what happened in Western Europe is even bloody worse. Because what happened there was Eisenhower and the rest of Allied High Command knew that the Germans are going to surrender. And they would, of course, try to surrender to the Allied forces, by which I mean the Western forces more than to the Soviet Union, who was known to be out for revenge. So anyway, as you know now, under the Geneva Conventions, if you capture somebody, you have to feed him, you have to take care of him, and you have to allow the Red Cross Society to actually access this guy so that they can be sure that you actually are keeping your side of the Geneva Convention. So it's a damn big problem when a country starts refusing access to the Red Cross. Yeah, whenever that happens, you can know for sure there is something happening which should not be happening. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. And it's also so that the Geneva Convention say you have to feed the guys at the same rations as what you would feed yourself. In other words, if you get a ration pack a day, then we expect you to actually go and give a ration pack to your prisoner of war as well. We know here at the Railway of Death that didn't happen, that we saw the results. All right, and we know that about 13,000 people died. Some say it's more, but I don't want to go into that. That is what they say, 12,000 something, 13,000, which is 13,000 too many. Should never have happened. But Eisenhower and these people had a problem. And the problem was they never ever planned to feed all these surrendering Germans. And we're talking here about millions of them, I think about 8 million Germans who were actually surrendered. And so now they couldn't feed them, or anyway, that's their damn excuse. Is that true? You know, they bombed 7 sorts of hell out of the entire Western Europe, much more than what the Germans bombed London or the UK. In fact, you cannot even compare the two. It's like comparing a mouse with an elephant. I mean, it's just not possible. It is nothing. It's absolutely nothing to what the Western US 8th Army, Air Force, as well as British Royal Air Force Bomber Command did in Western Germany, or let's say Germany at that stage. They just bombed 7 sort of hell out of it. I don't have to repeat all those things to you. It's in my books. Also, some people say it's war crimes. I don't. But I do believe I killed more civilians than what I actually killed soldiers. I have to think about that as well. But anyway, so to overcome this problem of not feeding the German soldiers, the ones who surrendered, and remember, we're not talking here of camp guards who murdered Jews and gypsies and other people, the spies. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the average Joe in uniform. So they surrendered, they were surrounded, and they were basically put into huge camps with barbed wire around it. And there's videos out of them. The American guards would walk past them and throw some parcels and food inside it, and the men would actually scramble to get that food. And if you look at them, they're thinner than me. In other words, they look haggard, they look like they're starving. Yeah, because they were being starved to death. Yes, it's a light war crime. Now, what happened further is they called this prisoners of war. They refused to call them prisoners of war, because if they did that, the Geneva Convention would apply, the Red Cross would be able to access them, and you would have to feed them and treat them the same way as you treat your own people. So how do you overcome that? What do you do? Well, you get clever. You get your lawyers involved. You get those scum of the attorneys. I was one myself. You get that scumballs involved. And then you declare these prisoners of war not to be prisoners of war, but you say they are disarmed enemy forces. DEF, Delta Echo Foxtrot. And if you say that quickly, it sounds like what? What does it sound like? Deaf. Yeah, deaf. That's what you do. So what they did is they refused the Red Cross access, and they just basically starved them to death. And they had, of course, these men now had no Geneva Convention protection. And there was a lot of women amongst them also. Now, how many died? How many died? How many do you think died? I mean, we know that in the First World War, the Royal Navy, after the peace of 11 November, Armistice Day, 11 November 1918, we know that the Germans then fell back. This is the First World War. They fell back into Germany. All hell broke loose there. Weimar Republic. From that came Hitler, blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, we were talking about the Treaty of Versailles, that it was coming together. And of course, Wilhelm II fled, I think, to the Netherlands or somewhere, and Germany went into chaos. We know all these things. Communism, blah, 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 all those things happened there. What you don't know and are not told is that the Royal Navy, probably assisted by the US Navy and the French as well, was still having a huge blockade against Germany, so they couldn't import food. So they say that anything between 500,000 and 1 million civilians died of starvation after 1918, up to where the Treaty of Versailles was signed. Yeah. Yeah, great, huh? Allies. Yeah, it's interesting to me that you don't read these things in the school history books, do you? Very, very interesting. And let me also say to you that the Brits were running exactly the same system in their camps for the Germans as well. The only difference between the Brits and the death system of the Americans were the name. The Brits called them surrendered enemy personnel. In other words, SEP, Sierra Echo Papa, but the same. Deny them Geneva Convention's protections. Deny them the Red Cross access. In fact, when the Red Cross got there, they said they found conditions extremely shocking. It's very interesting because they suppressed the Red Cross reports until about the 1990s, when they actually had to come out with it. But there's a guy who wrote a book, I read it actually, it's a good book if you can get hold of it, called James Baku or something, strange name. And he called it Other Losses. It came out in 1989. If you can get hold of it, read that book. Because I know there's a few people who would, of course, now listen to me and say, oh, no, this is not true. No, it's true. No, it happens. And this James Baku, in the book Our Losses, he claims that the starvation of a German prisoners of war were actually deliberate. He said about 790,000 German soldiers, male and female, but mostly male, were so killed. They were starved to death after the war, after surrendering. And how did he come to 790,000? You know what, that's fascinating too, because if you look at the official records, you will see that the army, any army, is very paper-orientated. I mean, before you do anything in the army or police, where I come from too, you sign for anything and everything, right? And they do check these things. So if somebody dies, the cause of death and the date and everything will be stipulated somewhere. They really like their statistics. And so he discovered a column called Other Deaths. Other Deaths, yeah. And we think that the other deaths are actually the ones died by starvation. Because I couldn't say it is starvation, of course not. But it happened. 790,000 or 10% of the men who surrendered were then murdered after the war by the US Army, British Army. There you go. There you go. And of course, this book caused uproar. And a lot of historians, you know, I seen the pay of the elites, they all jump on the bandwagon, try to defend their clients' honor and their paychecks, you know, things like that. But even they had to admit that a lot of things went wrong. They just didn't want to admit that it was on purpose. Okay, fine. So later on, another guy came out, Colonel Ernest F. Fisher. He was a former senior historian of the US Army Center of Military History. So we would take for granted this is a bit of an academic colonel. He would actually have done research, he would actually know what he's doing. I mean, you can't be a senior historian at such an institution without knowing something. And what did he say? He said, well, he agreed completely with the book Our Losses by Beck. He says that only in February of 1946, now it's 10 months later, after the war ended, almost a year, you can say, close to a year, the Red Cross gained access, and they did a lot then to stop this killing. But by that time, because of the appalling conditions, that's what the Red Cross reported, there was appalling conditions going on. Because of that, 790,000 men were dead. That is what, 79,000 every month? Yeah. 79,000 a month after the war. How much is that a day? More than 2,000, 2,500 men a day. About what Ukraine is losing to the Russians today, as we speak here, 1st of November 2025. And that makes it very, very interesting, because the Brits then went on, and then Kenya during the Uhuru uprising, about 57 people died there. Did you know that? White people. Well, the black people, of course, a lot more. But they did the same. They also would deny these fighters any prisoner of war status, and so they could be held and they could be abused, things like that. Yeah. So guys, it's really at the end of this. I think the message is here is that the inhumanity of mankind against itself will never surprise me. And I think any one of you who's seen war or who's seen death, you would agree with me that it is inhuman. And I think if you look at the great soldiers, I think of General Ulysses S. Grant, later president. He once said that there is never a time and place in the world where you have to draw your sword. By that, what he meant was, we can always talk it out. You don't need to go to war. You don't need to go and kill people. So who's to blame? The 3rd Brigade, the politicians, who else? Of course they're not to blame. They're the ones who start wars. They are the ones who give death orders, like Churchill did at Singapore. You know, no surrender. Well, if you don't surrender, you're going to die. It's easy to give such orders when you're far away, you know. That's probably the problem we have with the US these days, as well as Britain. The other NATO countries, their wars always being fought somewhere else. They don't experience it. They only see the homeless veterans there on the streets, and they don't care. Yeah, they don't care. The sad thing about it, it's always the greatest of men who volunteered to go to war for his country. It's always the best of men. It's the wankers and, you know, the others who run away, who stay away. Even the conscientious objectors go to war. But we should never forget who starts wars. Remember that the next time you vote.
No, I haven't pressed it yet. Now.
Okay, but you can hear me speak.
Yeah.
Do I do good?
Yeah. Perfect. The bridge is right behind your head. It's just perfect.
Remember, next time I need to bring water.
Okay. Are we starting? Wait a minute. Reach over River Kwai. Take 1. Wait a minute. It's going to focus on you.
Hello everyone, we're standing here at the famous bridge over the River Kwai. And may I say to you that this episode was made possible by the Patreons and Rebecca. So if you want to have more...
Give me that hat.
Man, you want me?
I look absolutely horrible.
Okay,
take
restart it.
Bridge over River Kwai. Take. Move. You have to move. You have to move over.
Like that.
Yes.
Okay, may I say we have a very annoyed director here behind the camera.
No. Take 3.
Hello everyone, we're standing here at the famous bridge over the River Kwai. Well, welcome here. You know guys, we've been doing this for almost 5 years and we have millions of views and more than 1 million hours of views. And we're really hurting our enemies because they don't like our message to come out, which is why we're so suppressed. So just a quick reminder, if you like the video, please think about it, buy me a rooibos tea. But you actually click on it as buy me a coffee. It is quite standard right across YouTube and everywhere else.
We just added it. It's a new support, a new method of support, which is greatly appreciated.
Yes, and it is still the same as we still have Patreon, of course, and we will still ask you to read my books and the books we wrote together because it's really, really good. This is Rebecca, by the way, if you don't know, it's my lovely wife. She's the driving force behind Legacy because there were times when I wanted to give up and there were lots of frustrations, especially with her.
Even in filling out the Buy Me a Coffee form.
Man, that's true. I've got a South African attitude against red tape. You know, you were standing in the queues where at television things you do get angry quite quickly. I think I won't get it out of me. But guys, to be honest, it's not only me making these videos. Sometimes Fossey and the rest would also contribute. And if they don't contribute in making the video, Fossey especially is doing a lot of editing in the background. So we're going to put in also a specific link where another presenter was involved, where you buy him or her a coffee, and not me, because I think it's just the right thing to do.
We're starting out the test phase now.
See if it works.
So you can buy us a coffee. There is a choice. You can select 1, 2, 3, or more coffees.
Yeah.
It's not coffee. We don't drink coffee. That's why, believe it or not, that's why rooibos tea is very appreciated.
Yeah, very much so. And then, of course, you know, I say this in the thank you message as well, but it is a bit psychological as well. If you keep on doing this and keep on working, keep on spending a lot of money to do it, a trip to us in South Africa to record all the Air Force things has cost 100,000 rand easily. At some stage you really feel abused, man. You really feel that you need to get something back, even if it's small. It's more about psychological, doing a good job.
And what I see is it motivates him to continue on and get new ideas. And he would like the trip, which is coming up, I think, or might, who knows when you see this, bridge over River Kwai. He was so motivated to do that.
Yeah, we learned a lot, River Kwai. It's a fantastic video. Also include Hellfire Pass, but we also would like to go to Vietnam and look at, Quezon and Dien Bien Phu and where the Americans ran away. The CIA headquarters left their files behind. I'll mention that. But even here in Thailand, in Bangkok, if we go to Bangkok, we fly to Bangkok, we can spend a day or two and record the Air Force Museum or the other museums that are there. It's history, man. We need support to do it. It's not fair that we carry the burden all by ourselves. I'm not really willing to do that anymore. People can enjoy the videos. If you can assist us, buy us a coffee, man. What does coffee cost? Or a rooibos tea? Nothing. Just contribute something and we can keep us going and hurt our enemies even more.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.